pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before I open it up for public comments, I just want to, we've got a lot on the agenda today. And at 11 o'clock, we have Cityscape coming in. They are a consultant that analyzes cell tower coverage and suggestions for how to fix that, coming in at 11. So wherever we are in the agenda at 11 o'clock, we have a hard stop, and then we will pick up from where we left off after that presentation. So actually, before I go to public comments, I know Jennifer Paisano is on, and she is going to talk about the blood drive announcement. So I'd like to let her make that announcement so that we can get her in and out. So Jennifer, if you want to unmute yourself.
Good morning. How are you? Thanks. I'm unmuted, right?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to let you know about the blood drive coming up this week. We are, most importantly, I'm just here to let you know that we are in a blood emergency, which means we have less than 2 days worth of blood supply on the hospital shelves. We go into a blood emergency mostly always in January because of vacations, people traveling, and people not being sick and not coming to donate. So we've done a very good job with Judy. We have emergency things. I just saw it on the front of your page. I'm working with somebody at the high school, a teacher. She's promoting it at the high school. So there's lots of good things. So please consider donating. If you can't donate, just ask somebody else if they want to come down and donate. We have a goal of 40 pints to come over and collect. So please just consider donating. I don't want to take up too much more time. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Any questions? Anyone on Zoom? Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I also want to thank Judy Maringer because she pulls this together for us twice a year. And it is much appreciated, Judy.
Yes, thank you, Judy. She does a good job. She gets it out there. So thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. All right, I will open it up to public comment. Anyone in the audience? Anyone on Zoom? Oh, Stella.
Stella Lagunas, it's the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Court. Happy New Year. One question I have is, will you be taking commentary when we discuss the Pike dock, or can I give you a comment now?
We will be taking commentary, but it's only going to be for procedurally.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. All right, perfect. Okay.
Anyone on Zoom? Okay, good. We will dive right in then. The next item on the agenda is the purchase of property and companion bond authorization. So everyone, and I feel there's a few people here on this topic. We have a special meeting that there's 2 resolutions on for the special meeting, and one is to authorize myself or the town attorney to bid on property for purchase of foreclosure. That is happening tomorrow, and therefore that's why we're doing a special meeting today, but we didn't want to put it on yesterday because we wanted to allow the public time to ask questions and also for the town board to explain without getting into bidding prices or anything like that, what the plan is and what we're thinking about. And then the other is allowing us to do a bond, not a bond, but a bond anticipation note authorization up to a maximum of $2 million. So that is, that's why this purchase of property and companion bond authorization is on the menu, on the agenda. It's on the menu. Yeah. So there is a property that we had become aware of, 2 School Street, that is up for auction. And the strike price that was advertised in the public notice was just shy of $400,000. It is adjacent to the school, so it is here in the center of town. We don't have a definite plan as to what we would do with the purchase. That's why we would be doing a bond anticipation note and not a bonding, because in order to do bonding, there are certain steps that need to take place and a process to get a Moody's rating or some credit agency rating, as well as the timetable to allow for a permissive referendum in order to move forward. So we are doing a bond anticipation note. It gives us a short term, 1 year. It can be renewed up to a total of 5 years, interest only, while the town board, if we should even be successful in bidding tomorrow, it gives us time to figure out what we would want to do with that property. But there's not very often that properties in the center of town come up for sale. We got lucky a number of years ago with the parcel that's in between Town Hall and PD, and that was not an auction. It was a negotiation, but it was a favorable price. So if we have an opportunity to take advantage of it, the town board is looking to do that. I don't know if there's any other comments from the table before I open it up, because I'm sure there's a lot of questions and comments.
I mean, I think the only comment that I would say is, one of our priorities for the year is to work on a facilities master plan for the municipal buildings. And I know that one of the things that we have discussed is thinking about, we've got to address the fit center, which is going to need to be moved out of the school. I know some of us have concern about the seniors continuing to be in the basement. I'd love to see them in a better spot. We also have some need for housing. And so thinking about an adjacent property in the center of town, it just seems like it does have a lot of possibility for any of those uses or a combination of. Obviously, we are going to be working on the facilities master plan, which will inform that. So just some of our thinking as we've been looking at this.
If there's no one else at the table, I'll open it up to the public for any questions and comments. Stephen?
Morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. Stephen Jacobs. I just came with a bunch of questions. They sort of break out into 2 categories. Excuse me, obviously you don't have to answer any of them. It's no obligation to, though the public can draw its conclusions. So, first, to address the perception that this was kept under wraps, that the public was kept in the dark until the last possible moment. My questions are, when was the idea of the town purchasing this property first raised? When was it decided that the town should pursue purchasing it? When was council asked to draft the papers, including the agenda and the complex resolution for the special meeting and bond? Why was the public not notified until the agenda was posted online at 4:28, on Friday? And why was the agenda not mailed to people who'd signed up to get agendas by email until yesterday morning? As to the merits of the proposal, obviously this information we just heard is helpful. Big question I think a lot of people are interested in is, how was it determined that the town should pay up to $2 million in connection with this property when it's only assessed at $1.1 million and change? And now that we've just heard that the strike price is $400,000, it seems like there's a big disconnect there. Also, how much would the interest on this bond add to taxes for the duration of the bond? What are the estimated legal fees in getting the bond issued? From past experience, I assume it's not a pittance, but I think it would be useful to find out how much they would be. Was the setting of the length of the bond at 5 years designed in part to avoid allowing the public to have an opportunity to petition for a permissive referendum? And finally, the rumor mill being as it is, there are various rumors out there as to what the intended use for this is. But one of them is it's going to be part of the housing plan, for other rumors also. But to the extent that it would be used for housing, why shouldn't it be paid for from the housing fund, which has more than $1 million in it, and that would seem more than adequate for this purpose. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Questions in there? I think I got some of them, but not all of them. We became aware of the auction last month, but because we did not have town board work sessions or meetings available, and also Thomas needed a little bit of time to research the possibility of us bidding on it and what that process would be. We also needed to talk to bond counsel to understand what the process would be on that. So it took a little bit of time, and that needed to all be done before we could bring it to the public as a possibility. With respect to, I think it was the Notify Me, which is the how you get the email notifications, something did not work there. And as I said last week at the meeting, we have staff changes going on. And so we have had some hiccups along the way with respect to just triggers and things happening. So I think the Notify Me did go out for the town board meeting last night, but then for some reason it didn't get triggered when the agenda for today's work session went out. So we're looking at that. We've also had problems with like the YouTube streaming. We're going to have hiccups this year. And so we're just asking everybody to bear with us. We're trying to fix that. Let's see, interest rate. We don't know exactly what the interest rate would be, but bonding and bands, there are a couple of different interest rates. So it could be as high as 3.6% before we get a rating, and then 2.7% is what the Village of Sag Harbor just got for $4 million ban that they put out last week. So that's still something that remains to be seen, and we'll work that out. If we were to issue the ban 1 year, the interest rate if we paid $2 million, and obviously we are not going to signal to other bidders at the auction what our high-end price is. So we picked $2 million just to have a number. So if we were to put out a ban for $2 million, the interest would be $72,000, which would have a budget impact next year of 0.6%. So we have looked at the numbers and very conscious of what the future impacts would be. If we were to convert it into a bond and be able to get the lower interest rate, then our total debt service going forward would be about $120,000. That would be a 0.9% budget impact. So I gave that out to the town board this morning because I realized people were going to ask that very question. So real estate taxes lost on that parcel would be $5,100. The budget impact is negligible. I know people are always concerned about the town taking properties off. The intended use, that's why we need the time, and that's why we're going with the bond anticipation note. It gives us time to actually react and bid on this. It may come to nothing, but we wanted to be able to explore this as an opportunity. If we decide to use it for community housing, then we would internally sell it from the general fund to the community housing fund and then recoup the money that we've outlaid. And that would be that. So
Yeah. It just allows us potentially more flexibility. Like I said, if it ends up as we do the facilities master plan, that it's a good candidate for, let's say, like a fit center or a senior center or a combination. Right?
Question on legal fees. I think it's 6,000 to 7,000, or no, 7,000 to 8,000 for the bans. If we go ahead with the bonding, and that's when we would have made a decision on how we, ultimately really want to, use the property, municipal uses or housing uses, that cost will be between 30,000 and 35,000. That cost will probably be able to be shared with the Community Preservation Fund. Community Preservation Fund has about $8 million in its accounts right now. There are potential acquisitions out there, so as we move forward, we may need to do some borrowing if we want to acquire all of the potential properties that are out there and bond against future CPF revenues. So there could be some sharing there as we move forward. And it's always something that the CPF chair brings up at least once or twice a year, saying, what happens if we run out of money? And I've always been saying, then we will look at what our bonding options are. But we haven't, with 8 million still in the bank after a couple of recent acquisitions, we haven't gotten closer to that, but with the potential of what's out there, that we may need to tap into that anyway. So we would share that cost. What else? Did I miss anything else?
A lot of questions. I'm not sure.
Setting the length of the bond to 5 years.
Oh,
That
yeah,
was just
this,
a logistical. Yeah, and actually bans are only 1 year, but you can renew them up to 5 years. After 5 years, you cannot roll them forward. So then we would have to move to bonding. And that's where a permissive referendum would come into play. And if the permissive referendum went down, then we might have to divest ourselves of that property if we didn't have a funding source. More questions?
I have a question and then a comment.
If you state your name for the
Here's a
record.
question, has anyone inspected this property?
Can you state your name for the record?
Lynn Riker. Has anyone inspected this property? Has your town engineer inspected this property? Has anybody looked at this house?
We don't have access to it because it's under auction. So Thomas did do a title search on it.
I can't hear you.
We did have the town engineer, we do not have access to it, so he was not able to go in because that's the nature of the auction. But the town attorney did do a title search.
Then I have another question. In terms of this $2 million that you're going to approve, can you use that for something else?
Yes, if we don't acquire this property, but then there's other properties out there that we want to use, to acquire, we could look at those.
Just be clear, we're not looking at another property.
Right, exactly, yes. Mhm.
So I just have a comment, and that is that it's really important that you have a facilities plan before you act. You could probably get a facilities plan going within 6 to 8 months if you hired a consultant tomorrow. And it would really be useful to you if you had such a plan, because then when you're buying something, it's part of your plan. Right now, you're going out and acting without a plan. And I think Americans have a tendency to act first and then come up with a plan. We really need a plan ahead of time. And it really means that you're not sure of your opportunity costs. You're going to commit to this down the road, something else will happen. You wish you had gone for 3 million and now you've only got 2. It's better to have a plan. And so then when you go to ask, people have a better understanding of it. There may not be as many rumors, although obviously we often have rumors, but it simply is a more transparent way to conduct yourselves. So I'd really urge you to create a facilities plan as soon as possible and get it out there so that we can understand what you're trying to do. Thank you.
Later this month, we will be getting responses and proposals for the facilities master plan.
I would comment that's really annoying that we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Later this month, we will have proposals back in for the request on facilities master plan. So that is in the works. Anyone else from the audience?
John Cronin, former town engineer. 2 observations. First is that 10 years ago, the town had engineered the stabilization of Real Point. And that's a significant protective shoreline, basically, for Cockles Harbor. At the time, the cost of that stabilization was about $4 million, and we could not muster any support for spending that money. And that included the discussions about a municipal bond. So now we're 10 years later, we still haven't done anything to stabilize what is a significant threat to Cockles Harbor and to properties that surround Cockles Harbor. And we are proposing to maybe spend upwards of $2 million in a very undefined, as far as I'm concerned, manner concerning this property. The second observation I would make is that based on some of the most recent hazard mitigation assessments done by the town, we have grown from a list of about 10 significant hazards back in 2014 to a list that now exceeds 20, some of which are almost unmanageable. And the most significant aspect of that, in my opinion, is that the current administration in Washington has been defunding things that we would normally rely on, including FEMA. So in the absence, or at least with the uncertainty of where FEMA funds may be concerning hazard mitigation for things that might happen on Shelter Island, I'd ask that you consider and factor that into your assessment about what you might want to do involving the purchase of this property. Thank you.
Hi. Councilor Short Island. So first of all, did you mention at your opening remarks that there are 2 town vote resolutions?
Yes.
So there is nothing attached on the website. There is on a revised meeting assessment where 2 points were taken out, but there's nothing attached to it. It says resolutions attached, but there's nothing attached. And I have an old copy of the resolution regarding the bond. I don't see any, but this is the only resolution. I downloaded it on during the weekend.
Both of these would have been attached, because Shelby and I worked on it on Saturday.
Just
Yeah,
check.
no, I just checked, it's not there.
That's weird.
The second page.
So the second resolution, nobody has seen.
No, they were both
No.
there over the weekend.
Well, I have what was released over the weekend. I only see resolution regarding the bond.
Well, the other resolution simply states that the town board hereby authorizes the town
Yeah, but-
supervisor or town attorney to bid on
So-
the
No,
property.
go up a little bit.
It's
right there.
literally a sentence.
Yeah, it's short.
No, just.
Yeah.
I see. Resolved that the town will hereby
But yeah, that's-
authorizes the town supervisor or town attorney to bid on a property to purchase at a foreclosure action. Is that the resolution?
That's it, yeah.
I think what happened is this morning, because we did not close 2 of the public hearings last night, we took them off of the agenda, and so when the agenda got uploaded, the special meeting portion did not get attached. So again, we're working out the kinks this year with new staff.
Okay, so I'm gonna follow up on the comments that my predecessors here already made, and they covered a lot of ground, so my Bible plan already went down to the toilet. I'm gonna focus on one issue, which is the process and transparency, okay? The proper process to issue a big capital commitment like this would be first to have public hearings and discussions in community, whether the community wants it or not wants it, whether they want to spend money on it and so forth, get some sense of it. Then there should be if we are gonna finance it by the bond, there should have been a referendum to see if people want to pay for it, okay? What you guys did is basically short-circuited this whole process, and you just went straight to the authorization of purchase of this property. And, and there's one step before that, which there should be a facility master plan, which I understand that the RFP went for. And I'm not sure what the status of this is, but there was supposed to be a consultant hired that tells the town what facilities are needed for the future of the town administration. Okay, so we don't have that plan, and you don't know what use will be out of it, yet you're proceeding to purchase the property just because it showed up at the auction. That actually gives us the I understand the excuse that this, oh, you just learned about it 2 weeks ago, and therefore we don't have time to properly follow the process, which is some kind of a plan, facility master plan, then public discussions, and then permissive referendum before acquiring the property, okay? But it really, I don't think that this is how the process should work. And I really think that leaves an impression in the public that this is all done behind the scene and it's foregone conclusion. And you just, by issuing this 5-year bond, or talking about 5-year bond, which does not require a permissive referendum, you're trying to shortcut the proper process where the public has some say to it, whether it wants to pay or not. You just shortcutted that and you're going straight for the purchase. So just given this alone, those issues, I really think you should not bid for this property, okay? There are other properties that could be acquired. I mean, just yesterday, I've heard the town board meeting, there's another guy came in saying, oh, there's another property for sale from my pal. So why don't you buy this, okay? And it's better than this. So there are lots of properties, but the first step should be facilities master plan, which you guys have been using for a long time to justify why not to clean up the wastewater generated by the town buildings, because we need facilities master plan first. Now you don't have facilities master plan, and you don't know what the town might need, but you're already going to bid for some property just because it showed up on the market. I really think this is not proper and process, and I think you should stay away from that bidding. Do you have any comments on that?
No, we laid out the process that we're following for the moment, and if we do something long-term, if we actually acquire this property and do something long-term with it, it will move to a different, permissive referendum.
Yeah, but you're already issuing blank 2 million authorization to purchase something, and if you don't purchase this property or purchase for the fraction of 2 million, then you're gonna go to purchase something else, okay? And where's the public's authorization for that? Permissive referendum.
We're gonna purchase something else?
We don't have anything else to purchase.
Well, that's what you say, but you're authorizing 2 million bond, which the taxpayers, us, will have to pay for.
We won't execute on the bond unless we purchase something.
Okay, and another issue that, like, I don't quite buy it, that this, you just learned about it. I mean, there was a elaborate resolution prepared with the bond counsel, probably town attorney and so forth. So that must have been kicking around for a while, and we just learned about this over the weekend.
Bond counsel has the templates for these, and so to substitute in our names and our information it took him half the day.
Well, can you address my comments about transparency and not following the process? And what justifies this?
That's why we are all here today, because we wanted to hear from the public.
Okay, so you've heard this from me.
Anyone else? Oh, Kim?
Hi, Kim Noland, Shelter Island. And I'm also going to speak on behalf of the Shelter Island Association, although given the timing of this, I'm going to be talking about goals and mission that the association has had for quite a while, as opposed to on this specific topic, because literally, there was no notice of it until Friday night, I think. I wasn't around this weekend, so my notice was really short. That's why I haven't had a chance to, go around. But based on the mission, which is to actually work with the town on important matters. And I think that we'd like to have a better relationship with the town, and, we really would like to have dialogue. And so when we write letters and make suggestions, we are representing 8 neighborhoods. It is a large portion of the tax base. And one of our missions in the recent past months has been to understand town finances and budget. as number of people on this board, and I'll call out Mr. Diet personally, because I appreciated his numbers and his comments last summer so much on the heavy use of reserve funds in the budget this year. We had some really good work done on that, and that was the topic of many of our meetings this summer, in the hopes that we'd have good results. And we actually did have great results, because the budget went from being 7% increase down to 2% increase through, in large part, the heavy use of reserve funds, which I believe for this past year was almost 900,000 or in that neighborhood, which is getting to be really big. Now, I don't know the implications of this particular School Street purchase on it, because I haven't even had time to figure out what the bid is in the neighborhood of. People have said there's a $500,000 mortgage. Sometimes there'll be a short sale, so you can bid below the mortgage amount and get it for a really good price. But as a couple other speakers have pointed out, you're not asking for even the assessed value, which is 1.1. You're asking for $2 million for this. So I'm asking myself, shouldn't we have a little bit more information? Shouldn't we have that $2 million delineated a little better? Now, I understand that there is this 5-year exemption thing, which, allows you a certain amount of freedom here in terms of what you can do, because as one speaker has already pointed out, you don't need a permissive referendum. I appreciate the fact that the supervisor did say right in her remarks at the beginning that when you went on to do the bond, you would go for a permissive referendum. And if that is indeed the case, that should be in the resolution, that you are going to do a permissive referendum on this when the time comes, in part because you're unable right now to tell what you're using the money for. I mean, the supervisor mentioned 400,000, and I'm not trying to bring out everybody's bid and make it public and all this stuff, but this is well-known public information at this point. What the mortgage is, it's on the title. So I don't feel like I'm telling any secrets here. And there is no explanation of what the additional monies, which you would then have free use of, would be used for. Now, as another speaker pointed out, the gossip mill being what it is, well, it's for renovations. And yet nobody's gotten into the house to review the state of the place, to figure out what is a reasonable cost for renovations. So I just have all these questions. And I think that my membership, once again, who, pays a pretty significant part of the property taxes collected, which everybody in the room knows is 95% of where you get the money for the budget. These people have a right, I think, to know. And I also think that we are relying on a lot of good town process, which, as another speaker pointed out, was brought to the fore with the facilities management plans, and really looking so carefully at how you were going to do the municipal wastewater issue with IAs. That took months. People had incredibly detailed comments about that. And I just contrasted with this whole procedure, which is seemingly kind of open-ended and maybe even in the form, I hate to use the words blank check, but in any event, that having been said, the timing, I guess, is one other thing I would comment on here. because if you did want to use it for community housing, I think it would require a zoning change, which would, put off the timing. And I just think we had like 24 hours to look at this, and yet the actual use of the money could be really down the road. And I really appreciate the good work to try to seize on low-cost opportunities for benefiting the town. But I'm really concerned, as are a couple other speakers here, about priorities. Because we have, the serious comments that the town engineer brought up about other areas where money needs to be spent. And I just wonder if that comparison, where are our priorities, needs a little more focus rather than just going out and trying to grab some real estate off the market at a good price. Although it's not a bad idea. I mean, don't get me wrong. And I will repeat that, my organization, it's full of a lot of year-round residents and also a lot of seasonal residents. We always talk about this, but I think it's really important that we get a better dialogue with the town. And I really, despite my comments over the months and despite my comments here this morning, it sounded a bit, critical or combative. I would really, really like to work with all the smart people on this board, because there are a lot of smart people on the board. And I think that if you talk to your constituency and provide them with information in advance, they'll be on your side. And you won't have, people coming up and saying, I just don't know what you're doing. We had just a couple days to consider this. And, I realize the exigencies of business as well, because that's what I used to do for a living. And sometimes you just have to move when you have to move. So I'm not trying to be, super critical here. I'll just repeat, it just seems to me that this needs a lot more study. You need to look at how would you use it? How will those processes go? If the housing is the critical issue, why are you talking about another community center or Legion Hall? If the housing is the critical issue, maybe the Fit Center could have a different solution. And, actually, I care about Real Point because I live over there. It's going to be a mess if there's a big hurricane or, climate change in the next 15 years, and we don't have anything over there. Okay, sorry, I got a little off topic there. Thank you for your time.
The one request that I would ask is, I know periodically the Shelter Island Association has invited various town board members in over the years to your meetings. So I just suggest.
Would you like to come?
Yes,
Absolutely.
please. I was going to say,
You got it.
any one of us would definitely
Okay.
be willing to come, just because we do want to have a dialogue. And I know the last time that I went 5-6 years ago, it was a good conversation. So I just throw that out there. Like we are.
Consider yourself invited.
We are
We'll talk
willing.
about it date and time.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the physical audience? Whoops. Before I call you, let me just see if there's anyone else who wants to speak for the first time. We're doing well on time, but I just want to make sure everyone has an opportunity. Is there anyone in the Zoom audience who would like to speak? I don't see anyone raising a hand or unmuting or turning the video on. So Jan, you're up.
Yeah, I would like to comment on the public appetite for this and the affordability aspect of this proposal. If, let's say, let's just consider for a second that you continue with financing with 5-year bond, okay, for whatever reason, okay, which needs to be repaid in 5 years, there will that 3.3% increase, that single property, 3.3% increase of the town's total tax burden. Okay, right now the total town's tax levy is about 13 million. So you can do the math. It's about 430,000, whatever, 425,000 a year to amortize this bond to repay the principal in 4 or 5 installment plus interest. So that alone would add 3.3% to the total tax burden imposed on taxpayers by the town. Okay,
You're talking over a 5-year period.
over a 5-year period.
Just a second,
okay?
making sure my math is.
Yeah.
Yep, okay.
We're not sure that the public will approve longer-term bond, which requires permissive referendum. There's no appetite for this after the reassessment. And as you know, the first school budget proposal, which asked for 7% increase, was voted down. The historical museum got voted down. So who says that the public will approve a bond for something they may not agree with, okay? So that's why this is all inverted, because you're jumping into execution and buying of this property. There are other properties which you can buy later without a plan, without assessing priorities and so forth, and without public having any say into it. So you might be heading for the troubled waters, if you think that you're gonna finance it by a long-term bond, which requires permissive referendum, which would lower the annual tax burden, okay? And also, you have to consider the impact on the people that got particularly hit hard by the reassessment, which is basically inland properties, which got reassessed higher. And therefore, the tax burden shifted to them. Okay? So a lot of people are really struggling. They've seen big tax increases, sometimes 20, 30, 40%. There's general inflation. There's insurance is out of control, and all those costs. So unless public is convinced that there's some plan and their priorities have been considered, like, Real Point might be a higher priority than, having larger offices for whoever. I think you're running a real risk that permissive referendum is going to fail. Thank you.
Stephen?
I just want to throw out possible modification, compromise of sorts that might make this more palatable to at least some of us. If I understood correctly, Madam Supervisor, your answer to one of Lynn's questions, the comment was we could use the $2 million for something else. I took that to mean the excess over the purchase price. And I think that's something that is perhaps particularly disturbing to some of us. And it would be less disturbing if the resolutions were changed so that the amount of the bond was pegged to the purchase price if in fact the town is successful in buying the property. It would avoid, for example, the situation where if the property were purchased for $500,000, which would certainly sound like a good deal, there wouldn't be an additional $1.5 million that could be used for any undesignated purpose, as opposed to saying, okay, the bond would be, if it's a $500,000 purchase, there's authorization for a bond up to time and a half the purchase or something like that. I think that, I can't speak for anybody else in the room, but I think that would be more palatable to the public, would also be easier to sell a referendum if you ultimately had to have one. So that's just something that occurred to me.
Thank you.
question to kick over to you and possibly Mr. Jackson.
Yeah, we'd have to ask Bill.
Any other questions? Thank you, everybody. Really do appreciate the input. Next item on the agenda is the Pike Dock application. And the topic is just whether or not to reopen the public hearing. We closed the public hearing back in December, and we had left it open for written comments. December 22nd was the cutoff for those written comments. And then we did get one piece of correspondence, which is on the website. And then the following day, we received the follow-up attachment that was referenced within the December 22nd submission. But we, as a town board, because the record was closed, could not consider that. So the applicant has asked if we would reopen the public hearing rather than making a decision. And so the board, that's why we're here, is just to talk about whether or not to reopen or to keep it closed, make a decision, and then leave it at that. So procedurally, that's all that we're here to discuss. So I'll start with the town board with any comments or questions before I open it up to the public. I'm okay reopening the hearing. Yes, we didn't get the second half of the submission from the day before.
I kind of want to see the rest of it. So, yeah, I'd like to open it, but sorry.
I'm open to, but
I think,
yeah.
I think the process is going to be, if we make a decision, there's going to be a reapplication.
Yeah.
So let's just
Might as well just
be
reopen.
one and done.
That's, I think it seems the most efficient.
And get all the information in front of us and
Yeah.
make the decision we're gonna make. And not leave the applicant with an argument that they weren't fairly and completely heard. So.
And we did have recently the Fagan Dock application where the applicant wanted to come back and do a revision on the plans. And so we did allow that to reopen so that we could hear what their suggestion was, knowing that we were going to possibly come up with a different suggestion. So we have historically done that. But I will open up to the public, and I see a representative for the applicant is here.
Good morning, John McConnell from Final Fritz, representing the applicant. You know, based on what I've heard from the board, we are in agreement with their sentiments and, you know, just how the public involved as well. I assume that if the hearing is reopened or the matter is considered, we're more than happy to come and address you, as I'm sure you would like, as to that modification to the dock. So we're perfectly willing to come out, and I really do appreciate you taking the time to consider our request.
Anyone else? Stella?
Hi, it's Stella Labutis again from the Shelter Island Heights Property Owners Corp. I know you're shocked that I'm here. So this is all about process. And I sat down and I reflected on the timeline for what we've gone through. And since the WMAC discussed this 8 months ago in May, we have had 4 in-person meetings because of the adjournments that happened. 2 of them were almost till midnight that we were here. I'm sure those of you who were on the board at the time remember that. There were 3 requested adjournments by the applicant. There was 1 month that the applicant could not be present when we were going to adjourn to the September meeting, so therefore it was pushed back even more. So there's been a lot of due process here in terms of looking at the material and the fact that, you know, you closed the hearing. And we feel in our community that if you are being lenient and having it being reopened as opposed to closing, voting, and if the applicant wants to reapply, starting the process over, that, you know, you're really being lenient and you're favoring the applicant. So we think that there's been enough due process that you have all the material in front of you other than the length of the dock. The length of the dock, it's, shorter is always better, but at the end of the day, that's not going to address the other heights concerns and concerns that have been voiced by other members of the community. So we ask that you close, and that if the applicant wants to reapply, that they can do so, and we can start the party over again. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience? Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Ward, if we were to reopen, our next meeting is February 2nd. There is a WMAC meeting on February 9th. I would want them to take a look at whatever the additional submitted material is. We would, on February 2nd, set a public hearing for February 23rd. And does that meet our noticing requirements? Docs doesn't require 30 days, does it, Shelby?
10.
10, okay. Right. So how does the board feel?
I'm okay with that. It wouldn't be the first time that we've reopened a hearing. And as far as cost and expense to the town, it's cheaper for us to reopen a hearing than it is to close it and then start the process fresh.
Yeah.
So I would rather reopen the hearing.
There's an efficiency factor, plus the fact that this action for the issues that are on the table is not going to detrimentally affect the other objections that we've heard. So it's okay to reopen it.
Okay, all right, so we'll put that on for setting or reopening the public hearing at the February 2nd meeting for February 23rd. Okay. Okay, next topic, use of WQI funds. This is just the WAC has requested and made a presentation at the public hearing to use $25,000 of WQI funds for individual water testing for people focused in the center triangle. And we had talked to Thomas to see whether or not it was an allowable use of WQI funds. And the determination is that we can. So, do we want to approve or deny?
I'm in favor of it. I think it's important to get the testing done.
Would it be prudent to send it to the advisory board to review?
The advisory board, that will be a few months away. We have a meeting this Friday. Let me just double check my calendar. I believe it's this Friday. We're having a meeting, Friday the 16th. The mission of that meeting is to do an IMA with the legal counsel. And part of that process is each town is going to have to adopt their own IMA, so we need to hammer out the wording because we want the wording to be consistent amongst the 5 towns. So Friday, that's what we're going to work on. So then we will need to come back and let the town board take a look at that IMA and pass it and then get it executed. So that's knowing this group, this group,
to get the MOU.
the advisory board, it could be a couple of months before that committee is in a position. And then once the legal counsel is engaged, then we have to work on setting up the procedures for actually hearing things.
Is it my understanding from looking at it that even if we bring a question forward, then basically the group has to decide if to like advance it forward to address it?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so it was like what I was reading. Like,
two tiers, like the committee may say, this doesn't rise to our level.
Right.
You can just proceed on however you feel. Or, this is an issue that we do need to bring in the legal counsel and analyze it. So, there is kind of 2 tiers of how things will get looked at. So it depends on whether or not we want to make this happen for this summer, or it'll end up getting pushed off until the fall or the following summer.
And just to say, what's making my support a little reluctant is what happened with the last batch of water testing we did. It just didn't seem that the town got a huge benefit from that and garnered a lot of information about the situation, and the people whose properties were flagged with issues, we're not even sure if they got the help they needed. So I'm supportive of doing this, but I'm hopeful that, and we've been assured by the WAC that this round will be run differently and pursued more properly. And I certainly trust them and what they've told us. And I'm looking forward to this being a successful endeavor this time.
It seems like I was very impressed by the presentation made and the methodology and just the way that they're approaching this study does seem substantially different, it feels, than the previous one. Feels like apples and oranges. And I guess I would just say also, as a resident of the center, I'm very interested, and I do think this is critical. And, if it is in line with the use of the funds, then I don't think it should be delayed further. That's my take.
I also think that what we're doing this round is going to be a far more comprehensive panel. So it won't just be nitrates and nitrites, it'll be all the emerging contaminants. I think it's going to be a more thorough study and will give us better insight to what's happening in essentially the thickest part of our aquifer. So I do think it's important to move forward with it.
I think there is much more serious information to be gathered with this particular study, you're right.
Yeah.
I trust that the members of the WAC will handle this more appropriately than the first one, than the first study, which was lacking.
Well, just even the way that they've set it up, I think is just, they've already it's not people self-selecting in, they've selected, the panels that they're doing, the pricing that they've been able to get through the county for a much more comprehensive set of panels. It's it's a good value, which I love, and it's needed.
So on February 2nd, we will put in a resolution to approve that expenditure into the QI funds. We are doing very well.
Yeah.
Nice. Excellent.
Good, right through.
Okay, so we'll skip over the cityscape because I do not see it yet. And we
What, 11 o'clock?
11 o'clock, yes.
Oh, wow.
Nice.
Look at us.
Yes.
Look at us.
All right, next is the Bootsy.
Look at us time permitting.
Left it in the car.
Okay, would you like minutes to look at it?
No. We talked this through yesterday.
So we had the public hearing closed at last night on Bootsy. Just to refresh, this was one where there was going to be just combining all of my different.
Herman's Castle.
Herman's Castle, yes, thank you. I'm like, which
Right.
one is this? Yes. So the pool was no longer going to be any part of it in the wetlands, so we were just left with excavation and regrading. Let me just,
And they actually made the changes suggested by some of the planning board.
And Teresa.
So they actually responded to all of the comments.
Yeah. Pretty comprehensive.
I think one of, like, my biggest concern is the road. It's just, I feel like we have, I think, something on Ram Island.
Hill Drive, but that's the
Yes.
neighborhood association kind of monitors that. I don't know that there's a association that monitors the Rocky Point.
Right, because it's not a public road, so it wouldn't
Right.
fall under Ken's purview.
Maybe this is Tom's question a little bit. Thomas?
Yeah, it's a private road.
Yeah.
I'd have to look into it.
I mean,
Can we compel them to do anything? It's a private road, not really.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, the thing that I really heard was, it felt like the concern was about basically taking the material out of the site for the regrading, right? Like that was gonna, like, it was like the trucks that were gonna come out were gonna wear and tear. Like, that seemed like the main crux of it, from my understanding. But then, you know, it was also really interesting to have our consultant weigh in of just saying like, well, actually, I would recommend that the material be taken out rather than left on site. So,
I mean, I think that the road access is something that they're going to have to deal with one way or another, because in order to get trucks in and out, they're going to have to fix the road. That's just the
Yeah.
bottom line. I mean, if
Yeah.
you look at the entrance from Rocky Point, it's like a 2-foot deep ditch. I mean, they're,
Yeah.
in order to get the trucks in and out, they're gonna have to fix it. So I don't even know that we need to put that in a resolution, because we don't really have the control over the private road, but
Yeah.
logistically, in order for them to do what they want to do, they're gonna have to
yeah,
fix
so
it.
maybe
It'll naturally resolve itself.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
how are you gonna get
My
logistically,
experience, you're not gonna get the truck in and out with the conditions. There's a covenant about the
Oh, yeah.
well, so we just need to make sure that that's included. It needs to be a low draw pump. It's
Which
which they agreed to.
we agreed to here, so.
It's not the language we would typically use, so we'll have to look at the covenant when we write it. We usually use 5 gallons per minute. And this is, it's written that way, so we'll just have to mimic the language.
And then the other thing was just the replacement junipers were going to be swapped out with red cedars.
Yeah.
I have just another thought on the vegetation thing. Because it is such a steep slope coming from the house to the pond, one of the things I was thinking is increasing the vegetative buffer, the width of the buffer between the house and the pond area, just to slow down runoff. So pretty much on the western side of the pond, just this strip where it's very steep, sort of.
Like this strip here?
Yeah, yeah. Just because, I mean, you don't need it everywhere, but I think just at the, steeper points, it might help with some of the erosion.
So what we're suggesting,
Teresa, we would need some input on Teresa. She was very concerned about runoff and direction of runoff, and that's why she wants the fill carted off the property.
No, I'm not saying to fill it. I'm saying add plantings, increase the vegetative buffer is what I'm saying. Just so that it's wider. Right now, it's 25 feet wide on the western side, and I think it could be 30 feet, and that would help. Just keeping it more wild and not necessarily loaded.
Would that, let's see. Upside down. Is the only thing that I can see is like, if you're talking about like right in here, would it impact this
No,
walkway?
I was thinking more,
Like here?
to where your finger is now, sort of
Here?
like the middle of that.
All right,
So sort of from this point.
so like a little dip.
Yeah.
Right in the middle. To maybe bring it out to like maybe close to that existing tree on the map.
Yeah, and then more, I guess, along the, let's see what contour is this.
yeah, I mean, in her report, she actually even said a minimum of 50 feet.
Yeah. And Teresa's recommendation was a 50-foot buffer. Which I think on the western side, it makes sense because of the steep slope. And I think you can leave a path and start after where you have the path, get down the short road, and then come across.
Did Teresa mention that last night?
What?
No, but if it's it's on page 3 of the memo. Yeah, she said, proposed buffer for minimum of 50 feet with an allowance for an at-grade pedestrian path to the pond's edge. So right now there is a path that leads to the pond. I would say, maintain the path area, but just to kind of increase.
This is just grass, grass inheritance mix, got it. Buffer now 25 feet, so you wanna make it 30, is that what you wanna do?
I think she's saying like 50 in this area right here. Right?
Yeah.
Just like in that little like C shape, like in the pond. Are you thinking like basically from the path to the kind of the other wooded area on the other side?
Yeah, or even just a little to the left of that, like so. It's really we can.
Okay.
You see, so like,
Yeah.
that walkway maintains, but where it gets steep, you would keep
Got
it.
it. So.
You could promise those reference points.
Yeah,
You got it. I guess just the question is what width do we want? I mean, Teresa recommends 50 feet. If you take the 25, 50 feet would kind of put it where I'm thinking.
I was just about to say.
Yeah.
I feel like it would leave about a 30-foot stretch of lawn.
Like a strip of lawn. It would like half the lawn right there.
Mhm. Using my
50 feet's a long way, okay.
using my trusty finger measurements.
It's also very steep, it's very steep there.
Yeah,
It
that's,
is.
I was gonna say the contour.
So maybe it wouldn't be, super impactful on the use of that space.
Even if it was just designated as like a no mow, let it turn into a wild meadow kind of area,
Mhm.
I think that would be sufficient, just to let it get more overgrown, to slow down the flow of water. And it's also a steep slope, it's kind of dangerous to mow.
Mhm. Yeah, I like the no-mow idea.
Instead of like increasing the
Yes.
number of plantings, but let it go wild and.
Or either or, whatever they
Mhm.
want to put plantings, then knock yourself out, but.
Anything else?
It's a good thing.
Those are the only things I have.
Oh, okay, yeah, we forgot the ring. It's the suit there in the back of my car.
Let's see. Okay, so we'll put that on for adoption on February 2nd. Mhm. I'll try to figure out how to define the area for you.
So, what the heck?
Okay. Let's see, Bootsy done. All right, so what I'm thinking is that we go into, well, before we go into a special meeting, why don't we discuss the resolutions on the, for the special meeting to see how we want to proceed, given some of the public input that we got.
Did we see if Cityscape coming early?
She had a meeting in Sag Harbor, and she's on her way as soon as that meeting
This will
is
be
done.
live.
Yes. Okay, so the two resolutions, when we go into special, the first one was resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor or town attorney to bid on a property for purchase at a foreclosure auction. Do you still want to proceed with?
Yes.
Yeah.
With respect to the bond resolution, it authorizes, the summary is authorize the acquisition of a parcel of real property for municipal purposes, stating the estimated maximum cost of $2 million, appropriating said amount for such purpose, and authorizing the issuance of bonds in the principal amount not to exceed $2 million to fund said, to finance said appropriation.
I thought it was an interesting idea, and I don't know if this is an edit that we can make. Is that there a way to peg it to the, like the price that we pay for the property plus like closing costs or something like that? I don't know if that's.
Have to ask Bill Jackson.
It's a bond
Yeah,
question.
I don't know if you want to like take a break and give him a call and talk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have his number?
I think I should on one of his emails.
I mean,
that's the intention.
Yeah,
So it's
that-
like,
yeah.
if that's, if we could, my thought is if we could quickly make that change, then that lines up with what we're,
You just get.
Depends on the intention.
yeah, so that seems easy enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I do have some concerns about spending this amount of money on a property that we don't have a defined use for.
Well, we're not going to spend.
No, I know we're
Yeah.
not spending. I'm very,
We're for sure not spending $10 million.
Well, the purpose that we were trying to achieve by using this number.
No,
Yes.
I'm not saying that we're going to spend $2 million, but no matter what we spend, it's still a large amount of money. So I want to make sure that
I think we need to define,
I don't think we can find it
cap it.
here, but we have to cap.
Cap it,
We do
yeah.
have a cap in mind, but,
Well, we can
For negotiation.
privately discuss instructions to Thomas who's going to.
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So let's do that, because discussing it here in public is just.
No, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just expressing a concern.
Well, we're all concerned, so
Mhm.
that's for sure. And look, it's a situation, I wasn't gonna make these comments. Where both things can be true, like a lot of the comments that came from the public, true. Our opportunity to acquire this property is an interesting opportunity that we should pursue. That's true too. And we're victims of the timing and situation of this foreclosure auction. We only found out, 2 weeks ago? And we spent most of that time trying to figure out how to do it, and if we can do it.
Yeah.
And that left little to no time to alert the public to what we're doing, which is extremely unfortunate. And nobody up here was comfortable with it. And we're still not comfortable with it, but we don't want to just let the opportunity pass without at least taking a shot. And realistically, and I used to do foreclosure auctions about 35, 40 years ago, these things rarely complete. They rarely go forward. So the possibility of this actually happening are, not great. But also, you can't achieve anything unless you try. So our chance of failure is 100% if we don't bid. And our chance of success, and we'll see what happens. And if we are successful, it'll be a great asset for the town. We own no property in this town. The town of Shelter Island owns little to none of itself. The last 3 parcels we turned over to Community Housing Board, which was a great thing that we did. Fully support that. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens.
I think it could be an opportunity, and I think that that's where, talking about what we feel comfortable with, it could be an opportunity to acquire property at a great value for the town, and so I think that we should not dismiss it out of hand.
I think if we can get it for the right number, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely, but I think it's like, we have to be at the table
I agree.
to do it, so I
Yeah.
don't want to overpay for it.
When did we give Thomas instructions?
He's checking with Bill Jackson to see whether or not we can put something in that would limit the 2 million to whatever the
So-
auction cost, whatever the bid price is.
Yeah.
Well, we still have to decide what
Right.
we are interested in paying.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want to discuss that again in
Yeah.
executive session.
Okay.
Just having thought about it. I'm just looking at
I
the,
think we should discuss that and come to that before we read the resolution and agree to it.
no, the reason we picked 2 million is we did not want to signal to any other bidders out there what we were potentially going to bid. So we purposefully put in a high price, even though they agreed upon.
I don't think we're gonna have to put the number in the resolution, but shouldn't we agree to a given number before we pass the resolution?
Well, we did, when we had our legal meeting, but I want to revisit that. As you and I discussed yesterday, I want to talk about it further.
Okay.
I think you and I are in the same place, is what I'm trying to say.
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
So, yeah, that's why we're going to bring it up again after we're done with the public portion of the meeting.
So I left him a message, tell him to call either one of us or send us an email.
Oh, okay, okay.
Could I have a comment on this, please?
Sure.
So regarding the price, I mean, this $2 million in a draft resolution, that really looks like a blank check, and it's just completely inappropriate. I would like to stress that the assessed value of this property is $1,140,000.
We're aware of that.
I understand there is $500,000 mortgage on it, yet the bank would accept something below that. That tells you something about the value of the house. And you don't need to worry that.
How do you know that? Where'd you hear that from?
I'm sorry?
Where did you hear that the bank would accept less?
I have my sources. So allegedly there's 500,000 mortgage on it, and the bank would accept less than that. So that tells you that it's basically the price of the lot, okay? And if you drove, I don't understand how, I don't want to signal to the buyers that we're not going to be bidding 2 million, Right now, I've looked at the assessed value for the July 1st, 24 to June 30th, 25, which will determine reassessment in the next tax roll. Inland properties right now sell for about 100% of assessed value. So nobody in their right mind would bid like 1.5, 1.7, or 1.8 or whatever. So you don't need to worry about it, okay? And I think the bid price is gonna be way below assessed value, because I don't understand how you can bid on a house that you've never been inside. I've been on the outside, I drove yesterday, that house requires serious renovation.
Everybody's bidding. Anyone who comes to bid has not been in the house. It's owned by the bank, and the bank is not offering access, unless you want to break in.
No, I understand that.
Which we don't recommend. Encouraging people.
Read is on the call.
I understand that, but then how are you gonna bid on a property that you have not been inside? Okay, because
So in every foreclosure auction after that.
that's right, I mean, not above assessed value, not at 2 million. Okay, the assessed value is 1.14, and the house requires serious work. This is gonna be much lower bid than that. So why are you putting 2 million in there? Why don't you cap it at assessed value if you wanna be safe?
Because as Supervisor Williams mentioned before, we don't want to signal to anyone else who might show up to bid what we're willing to pay or what our restrictions are. If we ask for $1 million a bond, and someone really wants this house, they come and build 1,000,001.
Let
They
them,
win.
let them. If they bid 1.5, let them have it, okay? No, this.
And we may do that, Jan, but we're not gonna do it in public before the auction, okay? So you have to get comfortable with
2 million
that.
looks like a blank check.
You have to get comfortable with that and realize that you elected us all to kind of make sometimes these kind of decisions. But that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is excessive, it looks like a blank check, so put something reasonable and signal to the buyers, if they wanna overpay, let them have it. Because this will not be a good use of taxpayers' money.
Yeah.
This is a 3/4 lot. If its land value is, I don't know, what's 3/4 lot now in center, 300,000? You should know.
The assessment, I looked at it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
It's around 300,000. It's already, it's broken out when you look at the
This
assessment.
house is worth something, but it's not, you know, that house requires work. I mean, it's just enough to drive around.
And the fact that the bank may be willing to take less is irrelevant here. Because it's what the other bidders who show up will be willing to pay. The bank is gonna show up and pitch in the mortgage as a bid. And if they're the winning bid, then they'll negotiate down from there. But if other bidders are willing to pay above the mortgage, the bank is out. So it doesn't really matter what the bank wants to take. It matters who else is in the room bidding.
And you know this.
I know too.
You have to explain to me business 101.
Well, apparently you said, you made a statement like that, so I figured you might not understand.
So I understand.
I haven't heard from Bill yet, but just looking at section 1 of the resolution, it is specific to, it calls out to School Street, identifies tax map numbers. So, I mean, I think it's sufficiently specific to move forward without having, and we can wait until I hear from Bill, but I just don't know. Something else.
So, I'm sorry, you're recommending what, Thomas?
The question was whether or not we could amend the resolution so that it was specific to this property. And when I look at section 1 of the drafted resolution.
Specific to the cost
The
of the
cost.
property, not just the property you've got.
No, but it's
That's
here,
specified.
it's hereby authorized to acquire for municipal purposes a parcel of real property located to School Street and identifies the tax map.
Okay.
So you cannot buy other properties.
No. And the maximum cost is 2 million.
Yes, so I think that's sufficiently specific.
Got it. That's kind of helpful.
Yeah.
Because,
Thanks.
we certainly never talked, oh, if we get it for 500,000, we can go buy something else. No, that was never
no.
part of the conversation.
No. No. Okay. All right, so we still have half an hour before Cityscape. So I would like to adjourn the work session and open up the special meeting. Shall we use that? Waiver. And then Liz, do you want to start us off with the first resolution?
Yep. Resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor or town attorney to bid on a property for purchase at a foreclosure auction. So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carried.
Just to remind, this next resolution requires a supermajority.
Yes, thank you.
Bond resolution of the Town of Shelter Island, Suffolk County, New York, adopted January 13th, 2026, authorizing the acquisition of a parcel of real property for municipal purposes, stating the estimated maximum cost thereof is $2 million, appropriating said amount for such purpose and authorizing the issuance of bonds in the principal amount of not to exceed $2 million to finance said appropriation. Detail. The Town Board of the Town of Shelter Island in the County of Suffolk, New York hereby resolves by the favorable vote of not less than 2/3 of all the members of said town board as follows. Section 1. The town of Shelter Island in the county of Suffolk, New York, herein called the town, is hereby authorized to acquire for municipal purposes a parcel of real property located at 2 School Street, Shelter Island, New York, and identified as District 700, Section 15, Block 3, Lot 47. The estimated maximum cost thereof, including preliminary cost and cost incidental thereto, and the financing thereof, is $2 million. And said amount is hereby appropriated for such purpose. The plan of financing includes the issuance of bonds of the town or bond anticipation notes issued in anticipation of the sale of said bonds in the principal amount of not to exceed $2 million to finance said appropriation and the levy and collection of taxes on all the taxable real property in the town to pay the principal of said bonds and the interest thereon, and the same shall become due and payable. Section 2, bonds of the town in the principal amount of not to exceed $2 million are hereby authorized to be issued pursuant to the provision of local finance law constituting Chapter 33-A of the Consolidated Laws of the State of New York, herein called the law, to finance said appropriation. Section 3, the period of probable usefulness applicable to the object or purpose for which said bonds are authorized is longer than 5 years. However, the bonds authorized pursuant to this resolution and any bond anticipation notes issued in anticipation of the sale of said bonds shall mature no later than 5 years after the date of original issuance of said bonds or notes. Section 4, the proceeds of the bonds herein authorized and any bond anticipation notes issued in anticipation of said bonds may be applied to reimburse the town for expenditures made after the effective date of this resolution for the purpose of for which said bonds are authorized. The foregoing statement of intent with respect to reimbursement is made in conformity with the Treasury Regulation Section 1.150-2 of the United States Treasury Department. Section 5, the proposed maturity of the bonds authorized by this resolution will not exceed 5 years. Section 6, each of the bonds authorized by this resolution and any bond anticipation notes issued in anticipation of the sale of said bonds shall contain the recital of validity as prescribed by Section 52 of the law and said bonds, and any notes issued in anticipation of said bonds shall be general obligations of the town payable as to both principal and interest by general tax upon all the taxable real property within the town. The faith and credit of the town are hereby irrevocably pledged to the punctual payment of the principal and interest on said bonds and any notes issued in anticipation of the sale of said bonds, and provision shall be made annually in the budget of the town by appropriation for A, the amortization and redemption of the bonds and any notes in anticipation thereof to mature in such year, and B, the payment of interest to be due and payable in such year. Section 7, subject to the provisions of the resolution and of the law and pursuant to the provisions of Section 21 relative to the authorization of the issuance of bond with substantially level or declining annual debt service, Section 30 relative to the authorization of the issuance of bond anticipation notes, and Section 50 and Section 56, 260, and 168 of the law, the powers and duties of the town board relative to authorizing bond anticipation notes and prescribing the terms for contents and as to the sale and issuance of bonds herein authorized, and of any bond anticipation notes issued in anticipation of said bonds, and the renewals of said bond anticipation notes, and the powers and duties relative to executing contracts for credit enhancement and providing for substantially level or declining annual debt service are hereby delegated to the supervisor, the chief fiscal officer of the town. Section 8, the validity of the bonds authorized by this resolution and of any notes issued in anticipation of the sale of said bonds may be contested only if A, such obligations are authorized for an object or purpose for which the town is not authorized to expend money, or B, the provisions of law which should be complied with at the date of the publication of such resolution or a summary thereof are not substantially complied with, and an action, suit, or proceedings contesting such validity is commenced within 20 days after the date of such publication. Or C, such obligations are authorized in violation of the provisions of the Constitution. Section 9, this bond resolution shall take effect immediately, and the town clerk is hereby authorized and directed to publish the foregoing resolution in summary, together with the notice attached in substantially the form prescribed by Section 81 of the law in the Shelter Island Reporter, which is hereby designated the official newspaper of the town for such publication.
So moved. Second. Because we need a supermajority, I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Councilman Hanley?
Aye.
Councilman Anderson? Nay.
Sorry?
Nay.
Oh.
You don't know that yet?
Aye.
Councilman Dixon?
Aye.
Supervisor Brock Williams? Aye. Motion carries. Okay. We're going to recess the meeting for 25 minutes. I hope everyone will come back at 11 for the Cityscape cell phone consultant to go over what they've been working on. I want to go into an executive session. We have, Rich, thank you for sitting through the past hour and a half so that we can discuss a legal matter. And then we'll reopen the doors and invite everybody back in. So, see everybody back at 11. We are reconvening the work session. Thank you for everyone holding on in a couple extra minutes. And Susan, we finished the rest of our agenda, and so we were able to reconvene and deal with some other business. And now you are on, so welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to share with you our progress on the Wireless Master Plan project. I'd like to share my screen for the PowerPoint that I've prepared. Great. There we go. All right, great. So almost a couple of years ago, Cityscape approached the North Fork region to do a wireless master plan similar to one that we had done with the town of East Hampton. And we were originally contacted by Southold to do the project, and then we went and sought interest from the other communities. And Cityscape is an organization that just works with local governments on wireless telecommunications. We have a team of engineering and legal and planning professionals that specialize in the federal and state regulations for wireless communications. And we work with local governments just in that market share. We don't own towers. We don't do site acquisition. We're not paid by the industry to do these plans. This is just, our clientele is just the local government. And so our services on this project include working with North Haven, Sag Harbor, Shelter Island, and Southold. And we start by doing community research, and then we do an assessment of your existing wireless infrastructure. We then map that infrastructure and look at the propagation pattern and where the gaps are. We provide you options for consideration on how to fill those gaps. We compare that to your code, and we seek public engagement, and then we put together our findings in a final draft and final document. So when I talk about wireless telecommunications, I'm not talking about Wi-Fi and broadband. This is just the infrastructure on towers and buildings, water tanks that are making your handheld cell phone work. Now, you might be getting Wi-Fi through your phone for hotspots. You may be relying on it for use of your laptop or other device, but the wireless world is what we're working in. As your device changes from a handbag to a 4 and 5G enabled smart device, you need more infrastructure to keep these devices working. Not only do you need coverage for your device to communicate, but you need capacity in the network. And you have a situation where different times of the year, you and the rest of the North Fork region have a swell of population. And so you may experience that perhaps right now, while the population in your community is probably at a low point in terms of numbers, you might have pretty good coverage. You may notice in the summer or spring or fall, as people come into the area and your population increases, your drive-through traffic increases, you might have a sluggish network. That's because the more subscribers you have on the network at one time, the more capacity it takes, and it causes your service area to shrink and could become non-existent depending on how many subscribers are using the network at the same time. The traditional deployment pattern for a macro cell system has been a tower with these panel types of antennas and remote radio heads added to the antennas. And now, over the last 3 to 6 years, we've been seeing the installation of what's called a small wireless facility that complements the macro cell. The small wireless facility is not a standalone solution. It's intended to do one of two things: either provide more capacity to this macro cell site, or get coverage into an area that's hard to serve, typically by zoning, but it still ties into this macro cell. It still works in tandem with the macro cell. The macro cell towers are typically taller than 100 feet and have multiple antenna array, can accommodate multiple antenna arrays. The small wireless facility, by federal definition, is generally limited to 50 feet or lower. Now, if you have a right-of-way that the pole is going in, because they typically go in your right-of-way, these small wireless facilities, and the average height of your utility pole is 60 feet, they're allowed to go to the average height of the pole in your right-of-way. But if your utility poles in your right-of-way now are less than 50 feet, they're not allowed to go more than 50 feet. Once they cross that 50-foot threshold, they fall out of the category of a small wireless facility. Small wireless facilities also have another definition that they have to meet, and that is that the antenna that goes on the pole cannot be more than 3 cubic feet per volume, whereas the macro cell sites don't have that limitation. So the antenna size is considerably smaller than what goes on the macro cell. And because of that, because it's smaller, it has a much smaller propagation pattern. The macro cell antenna, depending on tree canopy, depending on terrain, heights of buildings, other vertical obstructions that might be in the way, that signal can travel anywhere from 1.5 miles to 3 miles generally. If it was a high capacity site, that would be less. It may be less than 1 mile in a high capacity site area. These small wireless facilities are intended basically to cover about a 1/4 mile to just under 1/2 mile area where there is where there's less densification. In a highly densified area, you're looking at 300 to about 400 feet. So you require more of these to cover, you'd require a lot more of these to cover the same geographic area that a macro cell provides. So again, the intent for the small is to either provide additional capacity to the macro, or in certain situations, get in coverage into areas where a macro cell is not appropriate because of zoning and land use. So up close and personal, the macro cell antenna panels look like this. And when you see these smaller square and rectangular boxes, those are remote radio heads. They are added to the site to boost power and capacity to the antennas. These are microwave dishes. They're commonly used to help get capacity to an area where you may not have fiber. And when you see these types of skinny antennas, these are omnidirectionals, which are typical for public safety equipment. So on a given macro cell tower, it's not uncommon to see all three of these types of equipment installations. And now we're seeing sensors and all kinds of other equipment going on them. In addition to the above ground equipment that you need on the tower, you need ground space for the equipment at the base. And depending on the frequency of spectrum that's being used on the antennas, will then dictate the size of ground equipment at the base of the tower. Low frequency facilities operating in the 700 and 800 megahertz and lower require much larger footprint of space because the equipment generates a lot of heat and it has to have room for circulation and cooling. Your higher frequency spectrum antennas typically just need this ground space cabinet.
Susan,
that's about 3 and 5 feet. Mm-hmm.
Susan, I just want to interrupt you for a second. Zoom isn't working?
It's not going out on Zoom, it's just on YouTube right now?
Oh, no, we're talking to Federico.
It's just on Zoom, it's not on YouTube?
No, because we stopped the meeting.
Okay.
So wait, it's not on which?
On YouTube. It's not on YouTube, but it's on Zoom. That's okay, that's okay.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, I just had it.
Close the meeting.
The Zoom's not working either? You can't log back
Well,
in?
the link isn't up on the town website for the meeting.
It should be the same link as earlier.
Yeah, because I connected via the,
Yeah, it's the same.
I
It's the same
connected
as the
via the
calendar.
website as well.
Okay,
mhm.
all right, sorry, I had it.
Go to the town
message
board
that it wasn't
page
working.
and do the Zoom from the town board page. Try that.
Even from the calendar page too, because that's how I
Yeah, I
accessed
logged
it.
in through the calendar, so it should be working.
Okay.
I wasn't sure if it had cut out in the.
Okay, yeah,
Apologies.
No worries.
okay,
I wanted to make sure everyone was seeing it.
okay, all
Yes,
right, well,
thank
continue,
you.
Susan, sorry.
Okay, all right. And so just in comparison, these high frequency ground equipment cabinets are generally 3 to 5 feet in dimension. Your macro cell towers can be concealed or non-concealed. The monopole, the lattice tower, and the guide tower are the 3 non-concealed facilities. You have one of these lattice towers at your recycling center. And some examples of concealed macro cell towers can be this clock tower or this religious 3-legged pole institution facility. These panels that go around the equipment can be painted and have any kind of symbology or emblem or no emblem at all on them. And then faux trees, they are not all created the same. This is actually a 170-foot faux tree that is densified with enough branches to where you don't really see those antennae. That blends a lot better than some of the ones that I've seen in my travels. Now, recently, in the last few years, the federal government made a lot of changes to the Code of Federal Regulations. One of the big changes that they made has been in definitions and how to treat small wireless facilities. A facility, a building, a water tank, a silo, any structure that is not a tower is now called a base station. And so the base stations and these facilities are called base stations, and you can see how the antenna are mounted on these facilities for communication purposes. These base stations are generally non-concealed, and you can conceal them. These are some examples in the town of East Hampton, where the antenna on this building are either behind this faux panel here, or they've been painted to blend in with the architecture style of the building. Faux clock tower with, actually, I guess that's working, but these louvers up here is where the equipment is at this religious institution. And then this is a faux addition at this religious institution where all the equipment is back behind there. Now, your small wireless facilities, you don't have any in on the island presently, but they are deploying rather actively in the town of East Hampton. And these are examples of small wireless facilities in the town of East Hampton presently. These are non-concealed, and that you clearly see the antenna at the top. You see all of the cables and the infrastructure that's needed on the pole in order to have that site work. In addition to the pole equipment, you also can have ground equipment that you can see at the base of these poles. The antenna can also be mounted depending on the primary line in the right of way for the utility pole. Sometimes the antenna are mounted on the side of the pole. This particular antenna is called a cantenna. And then this is an example of 4 and 5G panels and remote radio heads on a pole. This is actually in Florida. And the disadvantage to these types of poles is that they're all single tenant poles. Even these poles are all single tenant poles. And consequently, what we've started to see is that if one provider goes in the right of way, chances are another provider is going to need to go in the right of way in that same area. So we're seeing 2Zs and sometimes even 3Zs right in the same area, where you've got one for T-Mobile, one for AT&T, and one for Verizon, all in the same vicinity. They can be built for multiple tenants. That is in the marketplace right now, but their market share is very small. We're not seeing a lot of those deployed right now. The ground equipment at the base can either be on the ground or it can be mounted onto the pole. So these antennas still need to have meters, they still need to have measuring devices, and then they still have some equipment that helps to translate the information from the antenna back into the fiber. The ground equipment here in these two images is exposed. We've also seen them put into equipment boxes where they're not exposed. And we've seen them in a rectangular shape, and we've also seen them in a square shape. These images here are examples of concealed small wireless facilities, in that the antenna is encased by a shroud. All of the cabling is contained inside of the pole, and the equipment that was on the ground is either vaulted or it is contained in the base of the tower, the pole. You can't really see, if I zoom in, you can sort of see the meter box in here. It's got a little window in it where you can see the meter box. So it can be all self-contained inside the pole if that is a look that you prefer. And if it's not contained in the pole, you can still get a more streamlined look of the small wireless facility if you have them put a shroud around the equipment that mounts on the pole. And then if you have the pole painted to all be one color, it is a little less visible than the ones that I showed you in the previous pictures. But there are lots of design options for the small wireless facilities. And I'm not trying to promote the use of RayCap products. I just have to clarify that they are the only ones that have given us permission to use their imagery in our presentations. And so they haven't, they've given us permission to their copyright. So that's why we use this picture. I'm not trying to sell for them, but just gives you a good idea of the different base sizes that are available, the different pole diameters, what they can look like at the top. You can add lighting features. I've seen lighting features added that actually don't illuminate, but they're there for visual purposes, but they're not really used for street lighting because they might be a residential street and they don't need any more street lighting. But then they do have functioning street lights if you're interested in that as well. So I'm going to move now into the inventory, the wireless inventory that you have on Shelter Island and in or around your 1 mile perimeter, because any sites that are within your 1 mile perimeter or just outside your 1 mile perimeter do have a little bit of an effect on your propagation pattern in your community. So you have 3 facilities. You have SI01, that's at the fire department, and it's a concealed monopole. It's a slick stick. You have a site SI02, it's a lattice tower at the recycling center. And you have SI03, which is a tower for public safety that's not used for anything but public safety. There are no sites in North Haven, and you do have some sites in Greenport and in Southold that do have a bit of bearing of propagation on the northern shore of Shelter Island. And there's between 3 and 5 sites on up in Southold that have an effect. You have SH04, 01, 02, S05, and S06. And the antenna on your towers is a mix of personal wireless and public safety. So you have a great presence of multi-purpose poles. A lot of times we'll just see sites being used only for wireless communications by the commercial service providers, but you have a great precedence of using public safety locations for both towers and public safety equipment with the equipment added for personal wireless. So both of your sites, SI01 and SI02, are used for public safety and for commercial wireless. And as I mentioned, your SI03 is only for public safety. And then 4 of the 5 sites to the north of you, just outside your 1 mile perimeter, are also used for public safety and commercial wireless services. So now our next question is, well, what kind of service and coverage are we getting from the sites that we have? So we put together simulated wireless propagation coverage maps. They are not intended to show you the exact footprint for Verizon, Dish, T-Mobile, AT&T, because we don't have their proprietary information about the exact antenna they're using, the beam tilt they might be having, the power density outage that they're using. I mean, there's a lot of factors that go into their specific RF propagation pattern maps that we do not have access to. But what we can do is we can use an antenna pattern that is generic and used by the industry. We can put in general power densities for that antenna and then provide you with a theoretical view of the coverage. We use colors to demonstrate the level of coverage that you're getting from the site. We go from yellow to no color. So think of yellow being like a light. The closer you are to the lamp or light fixture, the better you can see. So the closer you are to the tower, the more indoor building coverage you will have. So yellow is showing your theoretical indoor coverage. Where you see green, you may or may not have indoor coverage because that's going to depend on variables like tree canopy, building material types, number of windows, types of windows, all sorts of things play into how the signal can get into a structure. But generally, where you see green, that's where you have mostly in-vehicle coverage and outdoor coverage, but not necessarily in-building coverage. Where you have blue, that's predominantly outdoor only, not necessarily in vehicle traveling around and not necessarily inside. And where you have no coloration, those are your definite gap areas where you probably have very spotty coverage. And again, this is not taking into consideration population densities that may change. This variation of propagation pattern could change with seasonal variations of not only plant life, but people coming in and out of the area. Now we take this study one step closer and we look at your address points. And here we are trying to get a better idea of what the variable of plant life and buildings might use. So we've had a model. Oh my gosh, I just lost the word I was getting ready to use. Clutter. I think that's it. Clutter model that takes into consideration typical building materials and types. And these colored circles actually represent different address points and what we can anticipate perhaps being the level of coverage in that building. And that's why you may see in areas where you might have some yellow coverage, but you still might have some random green spots in here. And those random green spots, for some reason, the clutter model is picking up that there might be literally tree canopy over that building that causes a disturbance in the propagation signal into the building. And what ideally you want to see is no black dots, and you want to see very few green dots. In an ideal world, if you wanted to have the best coverage into the community, you would have primarily all yellow dots. And or going back to this other map, you'd want to have predominantly yellow and not green or open areas where you have coverage. And what we have found since and post-COVID is that communities prior to the pandemic underestimated the value of the commercial wireless network. And when people started having to work more from their homes, students having to study and be online, involved in online classes, that the bandwidth and the capacity of the networks dwindled to a staggering low proportion. And to the point where even public safety had become affected because people couldn't make calls out to public safety providers. We also have learned that a lot of public safety entities rely on the use of cell phone technology in their day-to-day work environment. And so getting these coverage areas out of the blues and no coverage and out of the greens and more into the yellows has been a primary interest to local governments, especially since past the pandemic. So how do you plan for that? Well, you have some great policy in Shelter Island, and I commend you on the work that you've done. Your farther ahead in planning for wireless infrastructure than a lot of communities that I've worked with. You have most recently your Shelter Island Comprehensive Plan Update, and you have goal 10-6 that specifically addresses the need to look at community facilities and adequate broadband and cell coverage for the community. So you have that as one of your goals. And in your town code, you have a list of priorities on where you want to see future cell towers to be placed. And your first priority is on publicly owned property. And then the second is on existing utility structures, including but not limited to telephone poles, electric transmission towers, water towers, etc. So that's a great start. So the next step that we've taken is to look at, well, where are your town-owned properties? And the green dots on this map on the left are plotting at locations that you as a town own sites. The map on the right transposes the propagation pattern over those green symbologies, so you can start to see which town-owned properties might be of benefit to have infrastructure on in order to fill in some of these gap areas. And in your comprehensive update plan, you've got a lot of great maps in there that show land use, historic places, and environmental conditions. And so our next step is actually for you all to look at these public lands and to vet them for Cityscape. What I need you to do is look at these locations that you can see on the map are not in a yellow area. If they're in a yellow area, you don't really need to look at those sites. But public town-owned land that's in these areas where there's green, blue, or no coverage, those are the ones that it would be great for me to know if they are indeed available for future wireless infrastructure, or are do they need to be taken off the list because they have a deed restriction that says that property was given to the town and it can only be used as a preservation piece of land? Or is it in a historic place and you're not going to put a facility on a historic property? Those are the types of things that I need to know about these town-owned lands. I've also pre-vetted some of them on my end, and I sent Supervisor Williams a list of sites that already removed some of these properties because they were entirely too small. Like I showed you the ground equipment, you've got to have a certain ground space with the town-owned land in order to accommodate not only the facility, but the ground equipment. So I've already removed some of those sites from your list because it's not practical for a site to go there. But the next step is for you to get that list to me. And then from there, we'll compare that list to your roadways and look at a macro cell solution, a small cell solution, or a hybrid solution of macro and small. Once we've done the scenario maps, I'll bring them back to you and share them. And after that, we encourage you to do a questionnaire to the community to get their involvement and to find out which scenarios they would support. That is super helpful information. It helps guide your master plan document. And after we have that information, we can then make recommendations to you on how to achieve that desired build out plan that will fit with your goal in your comprehensive plan 10-8. And it might require changing your code, your wireless tower code section to promote that. It might be that you amend your comprehensive plan section 10.8 to plug in some of these maps and goals and objectives of what you want to accomplish, so that when the industry comes in, you have something to give them and say, well, here's our plan, here's how we want you to deploy, and here's what we want it to look like. So that's what we've done to date. And I can tell you, we've completed them. We're almost 100% complete with our project in South Hold. They have a code meeting on the draft code in early February. So I anticipate their project probably being finished by March. I have a meeting tonight with Sag Harbor to present their poll results, and Shelter Island, or excuse me, North Haven is sort of waiting to see what the communities do to the north and south of them before moving forward on their plan. They've already done their poll. I've already presented their poll results, and now they're just sort of in a holding pattern.
Yes, Mayor Fiore reached out to me. He's like, if you do a cell tower on the south side of the Shelter Island, then we won't have to do one on the north side of North Haven. Like, slow down, Chris. Slow down. Simmer down, buddy. Simmer down.
So our next steps would be to get the list of vetted properties from you. After I get that list, I can probably have your propagation theoretical maps and poll ready within 2 to 3 weeks. And then we recommend that you run the poll for at least 2 weeks, but typically not more than 3. And then we come back and we wrap up the project.
We did get, yesterday, the assessor's office did finish going through all of the town-owned properties.
Great.
So
Great.
I'll send that on to you. I just sent that around to the town board.
That's great. And then now we just need to compare it to your wetland flood zone map, your historic district map, and any other sensitivities of the area that you might have. Like I did notice, like there are some properties that are very, very close to your historic inventory. So we definitely want to flag that as, you know, a last resort, if not just take it off the list. But thank you. That's great. That's great. Now, do you have any questions about anything that I've shown you?
I'm just looking at the proposal that we had back in 2024. So we're sort of in the task 2, but not quite finished with task 2, I guess, because we still have to identify potential, like which properties could be workable.
Yes, that would be great. And then we can do the scenario. So we've shown you your propagation map, but we haven't provided you the scenarios for fill-in yet. So that engineering task is right in the middle.
Okay.
We would need to, I want to make sure that we're not showing a site where no way in the world you would support a site in that location. So it's really important to us not to do any more mapping until we know that we've done some vetting of your town-owned properties.
Okay. So next steps would be get you the inventory, figure it out, and then you would come back to us in a public presentation, or?
Yes, or I can come back and, you know, like I did today at the work session, and I can show you the maps and the poll, and then I'd like your feedback on the poll. I can make any changes to it that you like before it launches, and then we would launch the poll.
Okay. Okay. If there's no questions from the board, I'll open it up to the public. Don't know if the physical audience has any questions. Anyone on Zoom? Okay. Thank you very much, Susan.
All right, well, thank you. Appreciate your having me today, and I'll look for your data table.
Yeah, I will, I just need to download it and get it off to you and something that's shareable.
That's great. Thanks so much. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
You too.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can't open the one, it's protected that you emailed.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, so Jeremy gave me,
Yeah.
access. Yes, because I can see it.
Yeah.
That's special. Okay, I will resend that, I'll do that after the meeting. That was it for our agenda today. We have executive session, with interviews, and I think that was it, and further discussion about price. On bidding, so that's it. Thank you, everyone.